Jeff still hasn't signed out.
So thank you everyone for joining us today for our discussion of The Kingdom of the Kid, Growing Up in the Long Lost Hamptons by Jeff Gaiman. My name is Marianne Delacroce and I will be your moderator this evening. And again, I welcome your participation and your discussion. I thought that as we answer questions, we can go around and introduce ourselves as well for those of you who don't know each other, although I feel like most of you do. I would love to get your feelings about the book and perhaps share a memory of your childhood growing up in the Hamptons. So if anybody would like to start out by sharing that, please feel free.
Well, I'll start because I didn't grow up in the Hamptons. I discovered Jeff's book through a guest words column that he wrote in the Star. I think it was last year, about the Becker House. And I was so intrigued that then I searched out his book and read that. My family bought a house in Montauk in 1951 before Jeff was born. And I was a sophomore in college at that time.
I'm back, by the way.
Oh,
yeah. Welcome back.
So anyway, for a long period, Montauk was a non-Hampton, which was wonderful. And I hate that it's not that way anymore. But that was how I discovered the book anyway, was through the column. And then Jeff and I initiated a sort of email correspondence because I was an architectural historian. And so that particular chapter in the book caught my eye and my attention.
Okay. Anybody else want to share? Thank you, Helen. Their memories of growing up. Favorite memory, perhaps it's relatable.
Actually, I did grow up in Wainscott, and my brother is, there's a chapter that features my brother, Michael Raffle. I'm Karen. Karen Raffle is my maiden name. And it was a very magical time growing up in Wainscott during those years. I always say I feel like I was so blessed because there are so many children. It's very different now from what it was. I mean, some of it has been, preserved, but many more houses. And when you go down to the beach, you really don't know. It used to be we would know everybody on the beach. All the kids would get together. There's so many teenagers within, I would say, 4 years of one another or 5 years, and we all hung out together and would hang out at the beach lane, the beach there all day long.
And at the Raffle House.
And at the Raffle House, yeah, and play basketball. Yeah, a lot of kids are at the Raffle House. And in the evening, we would play softball on the triangle, the green in the Georgica Association. That's when you were able to go into Georgica Association. Now they have a guard there. But anyway, it was a wonderful childhood.
Anyone else? No? I didn't grow up in the Hamptons, but I really enjoyed how you opened the book describing your bicycle route and delivering mail, because my childhood summers were also spent on my bicycle. Right. And the way you described the freedom of moving around the town and just the descriptions of the houses and the families and who lived there. And, it was my world, just when I was riding my bike and everybody that I knew. So I was able to relate on that level.
And you mentioned you grew up in Bethpage.
I grew up in Bethpage, okay. Here on Long Island. But I mean, so I was really happy that right away I was able to feel a connection. Everybody.
That's what any author wants to hear. Take my world and put in yours. Shall I just tell you why I wrote the book and all that?
Absolutely. And out of everything, what is your most favorite memory?
It could be pretty mundane. First of all, I skimmed through my brain. I said, maybe it was the time that my mom and Truman Capote competed for a painting at an auction in Watermill. but really it came down to, and you know, Mike Raffle, Karen Raffle's brother, and I used to listen to rock and roll in the basement of their house. So maybe it was when I listened to Mott the Hoople, you know, discovered Mott the Hoople. I thought I discovered Mott the Hoople, but it comes down to really mundane memory, and that is my mom, my dad, my sister Meg, and I eating Little Necks, clam chowder, and clam pie one summer evening at our house on Whitney Lane in the Westwoods of Wainscott. And the crazy thing is that my mom couldn't stomach clams. She couldn't swallow them. She choked. So she was really nice and, you know, providing that for us. But the reason I like it is that we were together as a family, a very happy memory, relaxing, talking naturally. And it's important for a child of a divorce like I am for that memory. And we were our happiest, our most relaxed out there from 67 to 72. And it was also where we dissolved as a family. And that's part of the book too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of mundane memory, but it really sticks with me.
And so then why did you decide to put your memories together into the book?
I'm glad you asked, Marianne. You know,
You did not prompt me to do so either.
You know, if you think back to your own life, everybody has a time and or a place that changed them forever and for good, that made you the person you had to be. And for me, it was the South Fork from 67 to 72. I knew it was special, but I had to find out why it was special. So researching, interviewing, microfilming, walking the haunts of my childhood, I discovered that every single passion I got on the East End in 6 years. You know, I fell in love with vintage cars at the Long Island Automotive Museum in Southampton, these Quonset huts on the Montauk Highway. I fell in love with fast cars at the Bridgehampton Racetrack, which had these wonderful dunes that the cars scooted around. I fell in love with penny candy at the penny candy shop, which was, you know, a citizenship center for all of us. You always stopped going to and from the island at the penny candy shop. I became a journalist because of reading the East Hampton Star. I really became a writer because my writing mentor, Jake Murray, who was sort of this, he lived across the street from Karen and Mike Raffle. He was sort of this cranky but fun Dutch uncle who let me into his life as a novelist. And he gave me writing rules and all that. Fell in love with nature just by walking the stretch of beach from Beach Lane Beach to Georgica Pond. And if people don't know about the beautiful symbiosis between the Atlantic Ocean and Georgica and the beaches, and the way that twice a year they cut a gut between the ocean and the pond to drain and refresh the pond, they're missing a hell of a lot. And I also discovered I love sex by watching a lot of beautiful women in bikinis. So in 6 years, I got all those passions. The other reason for writing the book is to pay homage to my dad, because my dad, Larry, settled us out there. And he also unsettled us because he sold our house on Whitney Lane without my mom's permission. He needed the money very badly. So in 72, I got yanked out of Wainscott and lost my friendships for a while. But the deal is, the paradox is, if he hadn't yanked us out after 6 years, I probably wouldn't have written the book, because you have to write about what you miss. That melancholy you got to embrace. And I know a lot of people, we all feel that. Mm-hmm. So those two things were really itching at me.
Is there anybody else here today that grew up in the area and has moved away, or are the other participants, are you all there now still? Yeah. Chester, I will unmute you.
Unmute.
There you go.
I'm Chester Hartwell, living in Florida.
Hey, Chester.
Hey, my parents bought a piece of property when I was a year old in the woods of Noyak. So I was one of those summer kids. And, but I got around to Sag Harbor, East Hampton. I practically lived in the Hook Mill. You couldn't get me out of the place. And I know what you mean about the communities and the friendships. And so I was there from, my parents finally sold the place in 2000, but we were there from 54 to 2000.
That's a good run.
Yeah, it was really good. I wound up working in East Hampton at Guildhall. I was the first technical director of the John Drew Theater.
Excellent.
By happenstance, I met Bran Farron, wound up working for him. And of course, he sold the company to Disney, and the rest is history. Then I went to work for Technicolor and other companies, IMAX.
What were your years at Guildhall?
78 to 81.
Okay.
And that was very special because you never knew who was going to walk in the back door of the theater because of, you know, all the residents, famous people and artists felt safe backstage in the theater.
Yeah. I have one lovely memory of Guildhall, and I think it was 69. My parents took me to see How I Won the War with John Lennon at Guildhall.
Yeah.
And it's sort of my first anti-war movie, and being a big Beatles fan, that was cool too.
Yeah, I wound up being the projectionist as well.
Oh, really?
Oh,
well,
yeah.
you have to wear many.
You had to wear everything. We did a lot of specials. We did a lot of film festivals. We did a lot of, you know, one-offs, and a lot of touring companies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I see they finally renovated the lighting system, so I'm very happy.
Touche.
Have you visited since you left?
Came back for a couple of funerals, you know, back around 2000 or so. And that's pretty much when Bran's group disseminated, all those friendships disseminated in Wayne Scott. I really like Wayne Scott. We finally got the garbage man to stop picking up at the seafood shop first and then picking up our garbage, because then they would dump 50 gallons of fish guts on our blacktop.
But the Hamptons are a paradise. That stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah, we were one of the first people in the commercial zone down there. And yes, I absolutely love the Hamptons.
Yeah.
I when people ask if I miss it, and I go, I miss the way it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
So my follow-up question was going to be then, you know, what do you think about visiting today? And you know,
Are you asking me? And
yeah, I was horrified to see that. If I may answer, I was horrified to see all the potato fields in Bridgehampton are now houses. And the road system, of course, cannot support it, no less the aquifer.
Mm-hmm.
do you think that children today will have similar memories?
Yep.
Growing up there, yeah.
Yeah, we were free-range children. My cousins lived on the caretaker estate in Watermill, so we were allowed to go all the way as far as the penny candy store if we asked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jeff, what do you think about, or anybody else about, you know, what comparable memories will be for kids today?
Let someone else answer, and I'll chime in.
My theory is that everyone, if they have a good childhood and a safe childhood and a positive childhood, that it's always fabulous because you have such no responsibility, freedom, and I look at all the Harry Potter my kids went through in the midnight, and those will be their memories. They're very different than ours, but I think it's still a childhood. And basically, if you have a good childhood, you have great memories. And I think after you've hit, say, 50, you've always seen great change. So you hear mostly from 50 on up about great change because it takes that long for you to see the change.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really start noticing change till you're kind of 30. You're 20, you start looking around. 30, you're noticing. And by the time you're 50, you have time to look back. So I do a lot of family history. And I have a letter that really kind of woke me up from my great grandmother who grew up in Wayne Scott. and she thought the place had gone to hell. And that was my image.
Was that
of
in
perfect
1916 or something?
In 1930s.
1930s, okay.
Or actually 1920s, because she passed in 1930. Right. So I always thought that would have been the ideal time. And then to her, it was gone to hell. So I realized it's all perspective. And another favorite memory I had is in a book, a local history book of a man that lived from 1700 to 1800. He almost lived to 100. And they asked him what he thought about what he'd seen. And he said the kids had gone to hell. And the reason was they used to get together in groups and sew on a sewing wheel. And then the boys would find out where the girls were sewing, and they'd carry their sewing wheels, their spinning wheels home. Oh. And then they stopped doing that and they started dancing. So he thought that the fact that they weren't providing for the family, that their youth had gone to hell. So I now look at history, and it's just where you are in the continuum. And that's how I see it, and people's childhoods and the good times and the bad times. It's really your place in the timeline, how you see things.
Right. For me, obviously, I'd like people to read my book to connect the dots a bit, but also to use the book as a platform to even going further back. But the key thing is the parents today have to take their kids to the nature reserves, the beaches. They have to spend time at the beach instead of the pool in their backyard. You know, there's a lot of trouble with aquifers, a lot of ecological challenges out there, but at the same time, a lot more land has been preserved. Many more hiking trails have been added. So if they embrace, if they let it surround themselves, if they get off the Montauk Highway in Montauk and head toward the Sound and go, you know, those parallel roads, they'll discover some beautiful swamplands. Just as an example, if they go to Jack Larson's Longhouse Reserve, you know, on the outskirts of East Hampton, a gorgeous sculptural estate. So those are the distinctive parts of the East End. You're going to have to work hard to find elsewhere. And if they embrace that, I think there's hope for the next generations.
I know my grandchildren love it down there. They don't get down very often, and they're still pretty young, 6 and 4. I think the only thing I see differently right now is that growing up down there, we had so much freedom to ride our bicycles. We were on our bikes all day, every day, back and forth. We left after breakfast, came back for lunch, took off after that, came back for dinner, took off after that. It was a wonderful life of childhood freedom.
And your parents didn't suffer any trauma.
Oh gosh, no. And I think about it now and I think, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did the stuff we did with the freedom that we did. Right. We would bike ride all day long, all over Sagaponack and Wainscott. And it was
you were free range.
Free range. I'll use that, Chester. That's a good one.
No phones. My parents didn't know where we were, but they knew we were safe. And
yeah. Well, that's why I had to begin the book with that you know, multiple mile trek going to the post office. And my parents didn't take care of that. It took me 2 hours to get the mail. But I also wanted to do it to introduce people to the idea that in Wainscott, very special place, one-room school, one-room post office, the Georgic Association, a beautiful place, an enclave that sort of was tidal relationship with Wainscott, farms. Karen Raffle got her parents to come to Wainscott because she loved the strawberry fields. Yeah. Pick your own strawberries. Yeah. So special place at a special time. But once again, we're talking about nature. And human nature.
Yep. It's really God's country. It was beautiful.
Yes, yes, indeed.
What's strikes me in terms of nature, I guess just 2 years ago, I started going to the Napeague Preserve, and the incredible variety within such a small compass of the natural world out here. I mean, from tiny little things like lichen and moss, and there's even cactus there. And every sort of 50 yards you go, there's something different. It's not dramatic like mountains or anything, but there's, if you look carefully, there's just so much variety in a kind of ordinary, humble way. But I mean, I go to there, and then of course Montauk, Camp Hero, and all of that, and it's just always so reassuring and comforting to walk those paths out here.
The Walking Dunes is a very special place. Yeah.
Well, Jeff, I wondered if we talk about the book a little bit more, how people who you portrayed in the book felt about being portrayed in the book.
Well, it was funny. Mike Raffle, as Karen mentioned, there's a chapter on Mike, us playing baseball together. I'm a Red Sox fan, he's a Yankees fan, so we're at each other all the time. The rock and roll, playing tennis at an abandoned house on the beach, by Beach Lane, listening to James Brown music. So Mike really enjoyed it. He became kind of a celebrity in his town in Cambridge, New York, on the Vermont border. My favorite memory, no one really complained, I have to tell you that, so which was very nice. As a journalist, we take our time, we vet, we show chapters of the people we've written about or their relatives to make sure that we get the facts, but also the tone right. Tone is very important. But Jake Murray led a very productive and yet a very tragic life. Alcoholic, tried to shoot himself, failed. Had his second wife die on the operating table. At the same time, he always looked out for Mike Raffle and me and other kids. Very protective, very optimistic. So what I loved is putting him out there in all his glory and non-glory, and people who had forgotten about him or didn't know parts about his life, they sort of had Jake under one roof for the first time, maybe ever. So that was very satisfying. But I haven't had any people really, burn me over copies of my book. They burned me in effigy over copies of my book. I discovered obviously when you go to book readings and people who grew up out here tell you stuff you never knew that you couldn't get into the book. I was reading at Canio's, which is a great bookstore we all love in Sag Harbor. And this one gentleman, we were talking about the old Hamptons Drive-In in Bridgehampton, which is where I fell in love with drive-in movies, especially bad drive-in movies. And he was telling me that the owners of the drive-in would let farm workers in through the back gate for free. So guys who were basically sharecroppers, potato farmer hands during the summer, got to see these films for free. I would love to have known that, to put that in the book. But that's what a book does. It unites like you wouldn't believe.
Did anyone who, any of the folks here who have read the book feel that maybe you wish there were more details about something, or maybe less details, like maybe too much sharing or not enough sharing, either way, or did you feel it was the right amount?
Just wish there were more books on Wainscott.
No. I think it was captured well. Like, you did a very good job of capturing the spirit of being a kid here in Wainscott and on the East End.
Thank you, Karen. You helped.
Anybody else?
I thought it was a good mix. I read it quite a while ago when I first became aware of it. So, but I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I love the mix of the personal, and then the cameos of people who one knew by reputation, such as Truman Capote. I especially loved all of the anecdotes about him. And then Norman Yaffe, that was very good. But then then there were wonderful little vignettes of Jeff's own life, which was both celebratory and also had its tragic elements. So it was a wonderful weaving of different emotions through it.
And I think Jeff's internet has, I see that he has, so hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us. You know, yeah, I had wondered a little bit if anybody thought that there were gaps or I don't know, just maybe pieces of the story that you remember differently, or like he was saying, sometimes when you tell a story, people tell you things that you didn't know or add more details to it. So did you find that, you know, you had your own memories of going to the drive-in and maybe, you know, it was a little different or very similar or not?
Earlier in this seminar, people read letters and spoke about how a certain generation thought the prior generation had gone to hell. And, you know, I played football for East Hampton High back in the 50s. And, you know, and we had great strength of character back then. But now they clutch their iPhones and, you know, yep. So the tradition of the last generation, of the new generation going to hell, it's happening.
Did you play for Coach Kiernan?
Did you play for Coach Kiernan?
Coach Kiernan?
Oh yeah, I did. I coached Joe Hansen primarily, but Coach Kiernan was kind of in his later years then. Yeah. Did you play football back then?
No, not me. I'm with my size.
Did you go to
be a water boy?
Yeah. Did you go to the games?
Oh yeah. I was in high school. I graduated in 1957.
Oh, I was out in 61. You know, but okay. Do you remember how football was so central that on Saturday when we're playing Greenport or something at the
or Southampton,
the whole town was there. You know?
Yeah, it was the big event of the day, of the weekend, as a matter of fact, any home game.
Yeah.
Is the football team back now? I understand that they were planning to. I think they don't play football anymore, do they?
No, they're back. They just started. They're playing the spring season.
Okay.
Now, because of the pandemic, I guess their first game is on Saturday. I happen to work at the high school.
Right.
Their first game is Saturday, but now it's kind of sad. I think the kids really want to be a part of it. Everyone's so excited that we're finally getting sort of back to normal, not really, but the kids are allowed to have 2 guests come and you get a pass in order to go, you know, to watch the game. So I'm curious to see how that's going to work out on Saturday for their first game, but the boys are really excited.
Excellent. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to say anything before about growing up because I had trouble with my microphone. I had to go back into the computer and allow Zoom to access my microphone, and finally figured it out. And then I lost the connection, so now I'm back. But I love these computers, you know. Any event, I remember the road races in Bridgehampton before there was a racetrack. My aunt and uncle lived right on the main street in Sagaponack, and
what were their names?
Foster, the Fosters, Everett and Amy Foster, my aunt and uncle, and there was another Foster family across the street. That was Everett's brother, who was a potato farmer. Well, both were potato farmers.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would ride my bike over from East Hampton. I lived on Toilsome Lane, and rode my bike over to Bridgehampton or Sagaponack from home. You know, my dad just said, just don't watch for the traffic on Route 27. That was about it. So basically I crossed over and went into Grainscott so I could stay on the back roads to get over there. But I remember those road races. I remember Dave Garraway, who was the host of the Today Show, the first Today Show, would race. He had a MG, and he would participate in the races. And Briggs Cunningham, who was a well-known later on sports car racer who built his own cars called the Cunningham. So he was a member of the race. And somebody told me that Roger Penske raced there, but I don't think so. But there was a terrible accident on the track, which was just regular roads that were blocked off. It was I believe a 4-mile section of roads in a sort of a rectangle.
Sonia!
But and there was an accident, and basically what they did is, you could stand anywhere you wanted. They put bales of hay up at the corner, especially at the SAG school, the one-room schoolhouse. Mm-hmm. They tape over the headlights of the cars. In case there was an accident, there wouldn't be any flying glass, but that was it. So, I mean, it was pretty dangerous. So, and there was a very bad accident, and a couple of pedestrians were killed, and that ended road races in Bridgehampton. That's why they built the track. So the other memory was the drive-in theater. I took my girlfriend, who is now my wife, she grew up in Poughkeepsie. We went to the movie to see Guns of Navarone, and the fog came in, and it was getting more difficult and more difficult to see the film because the fog was blanking the projection out. So we would move out 2 or 3 cars and wait. Finally, I guess we're almost up to the first row but then again, why was I there to watch a movie?
Of course. I'm here, Marianne.
I hear you back. Yes, I see you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to have to get myself a new computer here.
I think the Parish Art Museum has a painting, a very realistic painting of the drive-in from inside, from Route 27 looking west at where the future Caldors would be.
Yeah. That's a great painting. I love that painting.
Yeah, it's a great painting.
But I know what Jeff was talking about, being a free-range kid. That's exactly how it was when I grew up. I mean, my parents just told me to be back in time for dinner. Mm-hmm. That was about the only instructions I got. So we'd go off on our bikes, and the bicycle was the chief mode of transportation. I worked at Marley's during the summer.
Okay.
And, I had Jimmy Marley and Jimmy and Helen. They were an exciting brother and sister, because they would get into arguments during the morning. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it was I enjoyed my life growing up there. My dad was involved in G&T Dairies.
Okay, well, fond memories of G&T too.
He was the Gould he was the G of G&T. Tillinghast was the other part. So that's how it was. It was originally started as a Gould Brothers Dairy on Toilsome Lane, and then later in life, it was a merger with Skanks. Yep, that's right. I could see. I have a G&T milk case down in the basement somewhere, but I would go on the milk routes with my dad, and I worked one summer for my father as a relief driver. So I had 5 routes, because I would take the routes when the regular drivers were, taking vacation day or on vacation. So I was always late because I had, I wasn't doing a common route every day. I'd be doing a different route every day. So one of my routes was a commercial route down to Montauk. So I think the first stop was Hither Hill State Park, the camp store. The final stop on that commercial route was the Montauk Point Lighthouse. The Coast Guard were involved there. It was the Coast Guard mess. And a funny story, I had to make the delivery, you drive up the hill and pull up in front of the lighthouse keeper's house, go inside, make your delivery to the mess. And the only way to get back out is to go all the way around the front past the foghorns and then back down. Well, the foghorns were working one day I was there. So I waited. I had to time the foghorn so I could get past them before they went off. Well, I stalled the truck and it coasted right in front of one of the foghorns. And I'm going to tell you, that's the loudest sound I had ever heard. I was about 15 feet away from it when it went off. And you can hear that thing, what, 20 miles out at sea? Wow. My God, my ears rang for a week, I guess, after that. But yeah, it was, you know, as I said, I guess I'm yabbering too much. Sorry about that.
Very interesting.
Really? Very.
But it was, I remember one of the houses on one of the retail routes in East Hampton was Robert Montgomery's home on the way to Wybord Beach. The only thing I ever saw at Robert Montgomery's house was the kitchen. Because that's where we made the delivery. So, but it was fun. And Guildhall, someone was talking about Guildhall. Back then there was they would have summer stock. Shows would come out for a week at a time. Mm-hmm. And one summer there was Burt Parks was in one of the shows. Another summer was Shelley Winters, and her husband was Anthony Franciosa.
Right.
And also a little bit earlier than that, the stage play Dracula. Lugosi, Bela Lugosi played Dracula in the films. He also played him on stage on Broadway. But the show traveled during the summertime, and Lugosi rented a room from the Daytons down the street from us, Dayton. And Cheryl, who was their son, was out late, came in home one night, and Lugosi got home before him, decided to scare the living daylights out of him. Cheryl was trying to negotiate the stairs to go up to his room. Lugosi stepped out with his cape and makeup still on, with a cape like this. Cheryl never forgot it.
Do you remember what year that was?
Well, it has to be in the 40s. Sometime.
Okay, thank you. I never knew about Lugosi playing out there.
Yeah, it was. It had to be in the 40s. Yeah, late 40s, 48, 49, something like that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and I appeared on the stage at Guildhall also for my high school senior play. And Little Indians by Agatha Christie. So.
Right.
The whip. I remember Inez Whipple, who was she was the director. Yeah,
she was the executive director, and it's pronounced Inez.
Inez Whipple, right? And that's correct because it's I-N-E-Z. Yeah. My dad was in the Guildhall Players. He appeared in HMS Pinafore and Christmas Carol and a few other shows. So anyway, I've said enough.
No. Good stuff. Thank you.
There you go.
Sharing.
Earlier, somebody showed a milk carton. Well, here's something from Hillary's family. If I can just
bring it down.
It's
Osborne. Oh yeah,
Osborne. Yeah. Go ahead.
Right.
Dennis, it looks like you have an extra one.
I want one of
those. I have 8 of them.
Dennis is going to open up his shop this summer.
Yeah. Hillary, do you have any milk bottles from the Osborne farm?
I can show you what I have. Can you see those?
Lower
These are the off the tops.
Lower it a little bit. Lower your camera. There you go. There you go.
Yeah. And there's the tops. And the first one is raw milk.
Oh.
And this is a quart, what do you call it? A pint one. These are very rare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I actually have the silk screen that was used to make these bottles that I got on eBay.
Oh, very good. Very good.
There was a company in Connecticut that was going out of business that made all the silkscreen labels. And I just happened to luck upon it and actually have the silkscreen used to make all those bottle labels.
Very good.
Yeah.
I remember we had some.
Nora Pearson gave me one of those bottles from the Georgia Association.
Okay.
I had potato bags, and I said I would trade a potato bag for a milk bottle. That had stood against a tree on her property, and all the McCaffreys had mowed around it for years, and no one touched the milk bottle. So she finally cleaned it up, brought it inside, and then she ended up trading with me, and it was the first one that I had. And as she handed it to me, she asked me, like, what had she just given me, like this treasure? And I said, well, at the most, it's worth $30. You know, but she was afraid she'd given away, you know, a Picasso. And then I collected some of the oldest label from the tops that you pulled. Do you remember the little sound it would make? That the raw one came from my aunt. And the other two I got off of eBay, and I believe they were collected by people that boarded in Wainscott and all the big boarding houses in the summer, and they collected those milk tops as souvenirs.
Oh,
son of a gun.
Steve, yeah, what do you
D&T dairies. And here's the predecessor. This is a Gould dairy.
Yeah.
Clean bottle. Ward Freeze found this buried in his backyard. That's how I got this bottle. It was uncovered from his backyard.
wow.
I remember some city people telling me how fortunate I was to have, you know, fresh milk straight from the cow, you know. And the particular bottle I had blood in it.
Oh boy.
So that taught the city people something a little bit about country living, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Marianne, would you like to ask me who I would like to see in the movie on my book?
I did. So I sent Jeff a list of my questions beforehand, and he said he hadn't heard this one before. So I said, who would you think, if you're, you know, if this was made into a movie, who would play you, your parents, your mentor, you know, the different people in it. So go ahead.
Well, to play Jake Murray, my writing and sex coach, very rare combination, Jack Nicholson.
That's who I thought.
Really? Oh, that's good.
I envisioned like him or like a Burt Reynolds.
Well, Burt Reynolds would have been good too. Jack, you know, he was in a movie called About Schmidt, and he was very grizzled and crappy, like Jake Murray was. But there's a sly sense of humor that Jack Nicholson has that I think Jake Murray had in spades. So Jack to play Jake. To play me is actually a young man who grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is next door to where I live in Bethlehem, named Oakes Fegley, Fegley. And he was in a movie called Pete's Dragon, a Disney film that came out about 10 years ago, and a movie called Wonderstruck. Oakes, he's really versatile, a little bit older. But to play my parents, are you ready for this? The guys who played the Solloways on The Affair, Dominic West and Maura Tierney. The crazy thing is that Dominic West is a Brit, so he'd be playing my dad, who's an American, and then Maura is an American who would be playing my mom, who is a Brit. But the key thing is that it's not so much their acting; they're very good actors, but their characters end up having a second life on the South Fork in Montauk. If you've seen the series, lots of trauma caused by that affair. And finally, Noah Soloway ends up buying the lobster roll where he met the Allison who he had the affair with. And they end up having a good 30 years out there. And, you know, it just reminds me that thanks to good friends and the book and all that, luckily I've had a really nice second life out there. It's not my parents' Wainscott, not my parents' South Fork anymore. It's mine. And all the ghosts, you know, I kind of get along really well with the ghosts now. So that's why I would pick those two guys from The Affair to play my parents.
I think those are good choices. Did anybody?
Thank you.
Yeah. Did anybody, you know, given that question, think of anybody else who might portray my book? I thought for you, maybe Owen Wilson. That's how I envisioned you.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, like Jack Nicholson or like a Burt Reynolds, like just I don't know, like this sexy suave man. I don't know. Or
George Clooney.
George Clooney.
Actually, though, he gets a little grizzled too. That'd be good.
Oh, that's funny.
Dennis?
Yeah, but you know, I've been a journalist all these years. I've never asked that question of anybody, believe it or not.
Oh, where are we?
Well, that's
Okay.
The Wainscott train station.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
I'm familiar with that. Yep.
Oh, awesome.
And what book is that?
Is that one of Ron Zeal's book?
That's his picture.
Victorian
Yeah,
Railroad.
It's Ron Zeal. Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yes, Ron Zeal. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a railroad buff myself, so I knew Ron.
I am too. I'd love to see a train station in Wainscott.
Were you around when remember the steam locomotive came out in 1967 from Jamaica? It was the first steam engine out to Montauk since 1950. So it was 17 years.
Oh.
Ron Zeal and George Foster were kind of the sponsors of the trip because it was the launch of their book called Steel Rails to the Sunrise.
Right,
which was
right.
About the Long Island Railroad history.
Ron Zeal wound up with the only winter snowplow, rotary snowplow. It's now at Steamtown.
Yep, that's right.
He saved it.
Right. Yep, that's right. I saw that rotary plow operating once. Coming, it was actually, I didn't see it hitting the snow. It was on its way back to the West End. So
that one was an original Orange Joe. His partners improved it and patented the impellers and took over the business.
Yep.
And so that's a unique one. That's an original.
Yes, it is. It is one of the rarities out east.
Yeah, it was the only one east of the Mississippi, I'm told.
Right.
Or at least
Ron
wrote it. Yeah.
I worked for the LIRR as a relief agent one time. The worst time to have started working for them, I went on a strike for 1 month. It was while I was summertime between years in college. They went out, they were going. I came out, I worked 2 weeks, went over to, I went over and interned with Mr. Osborne over at the Southampton. He was the agent at Southampton.
Yep.
And then I went into New York and I did some intern work at Flatbush Avenue and also at Penn Station. And then the railroad went on strike for a month, for 27 days, I think it was. So then I finally got my first job and really the only one I could take because I didn't have a car. So, and being out on the East End, you were kind of, it was kind of tough. So I would take the train. I had the Sunday afternoon trek at Bay Shore. And it was exciting. It would be very quiet for a while. Then the ferry boats coming in from Fire Island, thousands of people would come in, board the train, and then it would be quiet again. And my trek ended at 9 p.m. I had to wait till 11:30 to catch a deadhead run out to Montauk to go home. Yep. So one night we struck somebody who had passed out on the track in Bridgehampton, and we were stuck for an hour, waiting for the police to come. So I didn't get home till 3 a.m. at one time, but it was fun. It was fun. But yeah.
And speaking of railroad stations, that was when Penn Station was still there and one of the most magnificent buildings in New York. Well,
it took that building being torn down to save Grand Central, to be honest with you, because that was the same fate awaited Grand Central Terminal.
Right, right.
Yeah, and so people got to dig, yes, finally,
He
but
said,
it's too late.
absolutely not tearing that down. So it sometimes takes something like that to make people wake.
I'd still wish I had.
Well, at least the Moynihan building, which is the post office, which was built at the same time, has been saved.
It's not going to be.
Now Amtrak has moved over into that facility.
Right. I'll give you a little transition. You probably know that Jackie Bouvier Kennedy Onassis was instrumental in saving Grand Central, the Grand Central building. She was also instrumental in saving Big Edie and Little Edie Beale of Grey Gardens fame. And the thing that Jack Graves at the East Hampton Star was the very first person to break that story in the Star in 1971, and I was out there. Another reason why I fell in love with journalism. That was a fascinating story, and we all know that that's become a mythic story.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
As a teenager, I would watch her, Edie, come down to Georgia Beach and swim almost every day in her black.
And Edie sighting, very good.
Edie was the mother, right?
Big
It was the
Edie.
daughter.
I guess they were both Edies, weren't they?
Yeah. Little Edie, yeah.
Big and little.
Big and little, yeah.
Anybody have any other questions for Jeff or anything that they want him to expand on a little more?
Jeff, who would play Chauncey Osborne at the general store?
Well, say that again.
Who would play Chauncey Osborne at the general store?
Oh boy, damn, that's a good story. I'm going to leave that up to Dennis because I'm sure Dennis has thought a lot about who would play his grandfather in a movie.
W.C. Fields?
You know what? I'll tell you what, that's a great choice.
Yeah. Remember, it's an oddity. It's spelled Chauncey, but it's pronounced Gilbert Chancey.
Chancey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you. Now, once again, the thing about the book is that virtually every character that I write about isn't around anymore. Truman Capote's dead. Carly Ostremski's long gone from Bridgehampton. No more Bridgehampton Race Circuit. No more Long Island Automotive Museum. The Star is still around. Jake Murray died a long time ago. But and I missed Chancey running the store. The general store was never open when we were out there, but it was so fascinating to look at that that started me on my history search. I needed to find out what it was like during the 30s and 40s heyday, and it was like a lot of small towns. There's always one hub, one business, social, sexual, whatever, sports hub, and that general store was the place.
No.
And Nora Pearson was scared shitless of your grandfather, Dennis. She thought Chancey was well, could be tough on little kids and could be nice to little kids too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
I have a question. What's
Sure.
next, Jeff?
Thank you for actually. You know what? Some of you, like Karen and Barbara and Dennis, met my mom. My mom was Patsy. It lasted until she was 94. The last 6 years of her life were spent checking off items from her bucket and fuck it wishes. So my mom went whitewater rafting when she was 92.
Wow.
She had a marijuana brownie, which she wanted for 50 years, which she found she wanted by watching a film at the Bridgehampton Drive-In called I Love You, Alice B. Toklas. So the whole book is about spending 6 years giving her wishes And I can tell you, it made her happier and healthier and funnier. So it's not only a memoir, but it's sort of like a self-help guide. If you're like my age, 62, and you've got parents in their 80s and 90s, and you're just, banging your head against a brick wall, here are some things that you can do. A countryside cruise, going back, reading old letters, taking them on whitewater rafting. That's my next. That's the book that I finished, and that's the book I have to find a publisher for.
Jeff, do you have any questions for anyone here who read your book? Questions for the readers?
Geez, that's a good question. I guess, a favorite part of the book for anybody, or even better, something that they either didn't know about or remembered reading the book, something they had forgotten for a long time.
I would say the auto museum.
Right.
I thought it was very interesting that you put that in there, because even though we used to pass it all the time, I was always curious about it, but I really didn't know much about it. So I appreciated that. I like how you bring other historic, interesting historic ideas and things into the story. Anyway, that would be it.
That's another part of being a great time for being a kid, because you had the Bridgehampton race circuit with some of the best drivers in the world. And in the book, I talk about being there the day that Mario Andretti met Paul Newman, and Paul Newman really became a big racing enthusiast, a driver, while testing the Bridgehampton race circuit. And that automotive museum had a Pierce Arrow, a 1933 Pierce Arrow, that was owned by Al Capone, and it had bullet holes in the trunk. Imagine being a kid seeing that. Think of how your imagination would go haywire.
This isn't relevant, but one of my prouder memories is that I got a ticket going 100 miles an hour on the Napeague stretch. I had a TR3, and I would come out usually on Tuesday mornings about 6 a.m. And evidently the policeman had been watching me for about 2 months, and they finally caught me. And the ticket cost $50. So, and the judge.
What year was that?
Sorry?
What year was that?
That would have been 1957.
$50? $50 is a lot back then.
Well, it was. I was going a mile over. Each mile over the speed limit. The speed limit was 50. I was going 100.
I know. Well, we all use the Napeague stretch as our own drag strip. That's where we learn to not only drive, but where we learn to drive fast.
Wide open spaces.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Jeff, I have to get your book, because I have not read it. I first found out about it when I saw your Marianne's email. So
great. Well, improve my Amazon ranking. That would be nice. But the book is made to be read a chapter at a time. Not everybody wants to read about Carl Yastrzemski, or Truman Capote. But if you want to know about the history, the long lost history, I think it's a pretty good place to hang out with.
Available on Amazon, I take it, right?
You better believe it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll look for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Carl's parents had his childhood bat and glove nailed to the a tree in their driveway.
I don't remember that. That's cool. Wow.
Yeah, I lived over in Deerfield, so we used to bicycle through the back roads with my kids, and we came upon the Yastrzemski home, and sure enough, there was the bat and glove nailed to the big tree. And he often said that he grew up in a sea of potatoes.
That's
right. He lived down in a valley there, so as far as you could see was potatoes.
Yeah, I know. Yep. And he used to practice his hitting stroke by hitting rocks with the bat after harvesting potatoes.
Right, and he knew it was a good year when his father bought a new car.
Yeah.
Yes.
I went
indeed.
to college with Betsy, his niece.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. In the book, by the way, Marianne asked me about a truly memorable memory, and I would also put the fact that my dad invited Yaz's parents to our home in Waynscott for dinner. 1968, after he was the only guy in the American League to hit over 300. And they came and they brought a autographed ball and an autographed picture. I still have the picture. What do you know? I lost the ball in the woods a week after I got it.
Oh, man.
I was going to bet on Mike Raffle take it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, because this is usually a sensitive question, but I'm into it. Is anybody on Facebook? Is this book on Facebook?
Yeah, well, it's on. You can certainly find it on my page.
Right.
The Waynscott Chapel, as I mentioned, have been very kind to plaster the book's cover on their page, their site.
Okay.
It doesn't have its own page. It doesn't have its own website or anything like that. I really thank Marianne and the Historical Society for choosing. It's the second book in their book club series, and this book came out 8 years ago. So for it to have legs like this is, an author can't be any happier about that.
I just wanted to make everyone aware that since you all are interested in history and discussing this, there are many Facebook pages discussing such things, and a lot of really good photos. Southampton's got one, and of course East Hampton.
Right.
Well, we, Karen and I and some others belong to Hometown Bonnock, which is another really good. It's great for old photos, and Richard Barons is a terrific contemporary photographer. So it's great to see that too.
Yes, bub.
And if you have any photographs that you want to send in to us, we can always post them and ask people to share their memories about them. We just posted a really neat photograph that we had in our collection of a snow angel out by one of the windmills.
Yeah.
That produced so many comments like, oh, I remember that, and that's so great to see, and what happened to that, So if you have anything like that we can share that would keep these kinds of conversations going, please reach out to me. You all have my email address, and
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
So
Jeff, I don't know if you know, but the Watermill Community Center put out an ornament this year of the Penny Candy Store in Bridgehampton.
Yes, I saw that.
Really?
Yeah.
God, I gotta buy that.
Yeah.
It's so sad that no one has bought that. It's been empty for so many years, and Harvey and Ruth Morris, who ran it for 40 years, talk about true citizens, and it's such a shame that no one has bought it and is not being used. Boy, oh boy.
The last time I saw it they wanted $1 million.
Yeah, it's way overpriced. It's such a small property. But thank you for telling me about that. I'll make sure I buy a couple of those.
Well, is that called the Candy Kitchen? Is that the one you're talking about?
No, it's Bridgehampton.
I don't remember the Penny Candy
Penny
store.
Candy and Watermill.
Yeah.
Oh, and Watermill. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Another lovely thing, and Barbara and Dennis know very well that Chancey Osborne is buried in the Waynscott Cemetery overlooking his old general store. And if you're ever in the Watermill Cemetery, which is on the Village Green, you'll find Harvey Morris's grave facing his penny candy shop.
Very good.
Isn't that lovely?
That's awesome.
Next to the Corwith windmill.
Yeah, that's right. Great windmill there.
That was rebuilt more recently by Rondout Woodworking of Saugerties, New York. And they also had a lot to do with rebuilding the Waynscott Watermill and and others, many others. And anyway, I used to live in Saugerties, so that's why I know them.
And you know who's from Saugerties, who lives in Sagaponack?
Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right. He does live in Sag. Which 4-wheel drive does he have now? He had a Rover.
Well, you know, you have to give him credit for buying a VW bus and restoring it.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
I traced the history of that house, and it was originally built by a John Stratton Osborne, and it went through his children, and then it was passed to the Rutowskis when the Polish potato farmers came to town. Yep. There are people still here that grew up in that house, a childhood house, and they could see to the ocean from Parsonage, which is really right now.
Yep.
Hillary, are those people who grew up in that house, do they live on the East End?
One's my neighbor right down the road.
Wow, that's cool.
Carol Talmadge. Cool. She was Carol Rutowski Talmadge.
Yeah. By the way, Hillary, I wanted to ask you, and some folks with the railroad knowledge may know this. I think I heard along the way that the Wainscott train depot ended up being on an estate in Sagaponack or Bridgehampton.
Right. It was moved.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Does anybody know where it is?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. At least it was salvaged. At least it was saved.
Yeah.
The Wainscott General Store just came down in November of 2020. The old Crutchley General Store that stood on Main Street and was moved to the south side.
Right.
That came down in November.
The Wainscott, according to the book, Wainscott Railroad Station had a colored waiting room as well.
Yeah. It was a Jim Crow station. You're right.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Wainscott people are sensitive about that because it wasn't the Wainscott people who wanted that separation. Yeah. That separation didn't come about until it was demanded by the city people coming out. Yeah. As far as Wainscott people, they couldn't have cared less, you know, and mixed freely. You know? So.
Right, right.
Oh.
Thing. So one of the, you know, talking about the destruction of Penn Station in New York, one of the East End stations that they really screwed up on and taking down is the Amagansett Station. That was a beautiful building, and it was typical LIRR. And well, when they took that down, now it's a platform with a shelter. So,
like Bridgehampton as well.
That's correct. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That had history. That's where the German saboteurs bought their tickets to New York after they came ashore and wandered over to the railroad station. Yeah. The station agent there was the one who kind of tipped off folks calling ahead, saying these guys don't look right for out here. So that had some history.
Yeah, I raised my voice for the saving the Southampton depot and watched the freight depot come down. It was horrific.
Yeah, the freight depot was across the track, the Southampton station. Yeah, and the Railway Express depot in East Hampton was moved over to Sag Harbor Road. It's still there today, over near where the railroad crosses the Sag Harbor Turnpike. That building was saved and moved, which was nice to see.
I think, you know, the historians could make a case that per capita, more buildings have been moved on the South Fork than any other place in the world.
Well, Kennelly was the guy who moved a lot of stuff. Kennelly in Southampton.
Yeah. Chester.
Yes, sir.
The title of that book about railroad stations?
Oh, Victoria, I got a copy of it too.
Victorian Railroad Stations of Long Island.
Okay.
Ron Zeal.
All right.
Ron Zeal.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Can we select that for a future discussion?
Why not, Marianne? Hey, why not? Yeah.
Making a note.
No. I know.
Any
Well,
other
Marianne,
questions
thank
or
you.
final thoughts?
What's good?
Yeah, any other final thoughts or questions this evening? We just have about 10 more minutes.
Thank you for hanging in there with my technical difficulties.
Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to everyone for participating tonight. I hope that you enjoyed the program. Please stay tuned to our website, easthamptonhistory.org, for more information about our upcoming programs and events. And be on the lookout in your email for a survey about the program tonight. Make sure to give us feedback about any other programs you'd like to see or books that you'd like to discuss with us. And I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Marianne.
Bye now. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jeff.
Bye, Jeff.